Good day. In this now I'm going to talk about how can you increase your emotional intelligence in job interviews. Okay, and right from the start I realized that the probability you trust a no-name Romanian dude is quite limited. So for this I'm going to refer to an article from a reputable source, and we'll go through what emotional intelligence is, what are the core skills, and essentially, hands-on, how can you improve these. All right, so from the start, people with high emotional intelligence tend to be high performers. So 90% of high performers have this EQ. Right? Then, just quickly, what is emotional intelligence? Is the ability to understand and to manage your emotions and the emotions of others. Okay, so both your emotions and the emotions of others. And just quickly, what are the skills needed to score well on these things? Self-awareness, which translates to job interviews to your ability to self-assess, to be aware of how qualitative your answers are, right? Then the second one would be self-regulation. How do you handle stress? Okay, so basically what this means, many of you would greatly benefit from pausing before responding, detaching yourself a little bit from the conversation, not to get into a reactive medium into which you would spill the beans, so to speak. Or another one would be empathy, which I just covered in another video. And it is a crucially important, your capability of understanding other person's experiences as emotions, to read your interviewer, right? The fourth one is motivation. Basically, motivation means your ability to inspire both yourself and others to action, right? So motivation is also an important one. And finally, social skills. How you perceive emotions and interact and communicate with others, right? But far more interestingly, how do you increase emotional intelligence specifically for job interviews? And I'm going to take exactly what this article is saying. The number one thing you could do to improve on this would be journaling. Okay, so basically record and reflect daily on how your emotions influence your decision-making, interactions, and meetings. So if you translate this to a job interview, to preparing a job interview, so to speak, would be brain dumps, journaling your stories, journaling your key highlights in your career, positive and negative, okay, as a means to improve your emotional intelligence. Specifically, you would improve your self-awareness. In the process, I would say this is the most important one, right? So journaling would be first. Undergo a 360 assessment, seek feedback from colleagues and conduct a self-assessment to surface leadership gaps. Okay, so what is an assessment when compared to preparing for job interviews? This is coaching. This is the classic definition of receiving feedback from someone, ideally, someone who's a subject matter expert in job interviews, so to speak, right? So when you receive this type of feedback, it's also a form of improving your emotional intelligence, right? Practice active listening. So high distractions, focus on what the speaker is saying and show you're engaged using non-verbal cues. Okay, so this is also a super important one, right? So being able to listen and read between the lines of your interviewers and agree, with gestures. You could, nod in approval if you want during a job interview is also something hugely important, right? Pay attention to your emotions, right? So what I just previously said, that maybe you tend to have a reactive approach, so you'd rather prefer to pause during the process, to intentionally pause, even if for as long as 20 seconds before giving, I would hope, your best possible answer. And number 5 would be, in order to improve emotional intelligence, it's also, a matter of training. Okay, so it's also, this article recommends you took their training, but I also argue I have my own training programs for job interviews. But the point is that these things are something that many people are focusing on improving your interviewing skills and your emotional intelligence in a quantifiable way, you know, in an outcome-driven approach. Right? So, for example, whatever course of training or training program you take, there will be some quantifiable outcomes from those which this is the core difference between preparing on your own and using someone else's training to build, you know, self-awareness and these sort of things, right? So as you can see here, emotional intelligence is, you know, often overlooked by many great subject matter experts. And basically, you know, even if the interviewer is well-intentioned and they want to send you some non-verbal clues in their job interviews, unless you really score well on emotional intelligence, chances are you will miss these. Okay, so this is why I would highly recommend you prepare these job interviews with this. You know, you can take this from this lens. I sell this as a behavioral interview training, but it's all about your emotional intelligence at the end of the day, if you want to look at this from a psychological perspective. Right, so I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.